Good, beautiful day. Guess what? I now have a pacemaker. No, I'm not kidding. I have a 50-cent piece-sized lump inside the skin of my upper left chest. On the afternoon of Friday the 13th, here in 2026, a doctor put a Boston Scientific pacemaker in my chest. And in a minute, I'll tell you the whole God-blessed story. First, hey, do me a favor. Go hit the like button on the on a YouTube video. Will you do that, please? Or go write a review of the show or a specific podcast for me on iTunes. Hit the like button on Facebook or X posts that I make. The deal is, you guys, your social media attaboys and likes and thumbs up and reviews, all of that are good juice, help, good energy to help get the word out there about the Uncensored Unprofessor University. Also, I want you to know I have a UU webpage, www.uncensoredunprofessor.com. I have links there for Patreon pledges. I have a list of my favorite books of all time, my current reading list, videos of sermons I've done, videos of how to survive the college avalanche series, and of course I have links there to all 457 podcasts that I produced over the last 8 or more years. Again, it's www.uncensoredunprofessor.com. Go check that out, you guys. Across 4 days from Monday through Thursday, leading up to Friday the 13th, my blood pressure had been all over the place. Up, down, high, systolic, high highs, low, diastolic lows. Friday morning, I was on my way to the golf course over across the valley for a senior scramble I like to play in, but I'm driving along and I decided I don't feel good. Something's just off. So I asked my phone's AI, what does wildly fluctuating blood pressure and a low pulse indicate? And the answer was, seek professional medical help immediately. Well, unlike several times before I'd asked that question, the answer hit me in the gut. You know how, my listener, you know how you can hear or read something you've come across before, but this time it registers or it hits home? That's what happened. My existential alarm bells were going off and a kind of resolve hit me. So I said to myself, you know what, let's just drive to the ER and have them rule some things out. But first I drove back toward home. I went into Walgreens, the pharmacy, and I thought, because I was thinking maybe my current blood pressure monitor is old and it's off, so it's inaccurate. So I've had it for 5 years. Is the hose corroded? Are the monitor's reads off somehow? But as I stood there in the back of the store looking at which $50 blood pressure monitor to get, and I was thinking, sheesh, I could get one on Amazon for $30 and save me $20, but then that'd take a few more days and I don't have a few more days. But I stood there thinking, you know what? It's not the machine. I just don't feel right. Something's off. So I drove a couple minutes home, told Tanya what I was going to do. I drove myself down to the emergency room. I don't know if it's 12, 14 minutes away, and at about 10 o'clock I walked in. When I checked in, she said, same address, same insurance? Yeah. And I had taken a magazine with me because across my life I've been in hospital and emergency rooms and clinics and doctor waiting rooms, and you can sit there for hours on end. And instead of sitting there going crazy from impatience, I like to redeem the time, so I took a magazine with me. Well, I take a magazine and I can still sit there and go crazy from impatience, but I try to take solace in the fact that by reading and I'm learning, I'm nevertheless redeeming the time. But 1 minute of opening my magazine, and my name is called Edmund Rebarzik. The triage nurse was trying to pronounce my name, and she said when I walked over, "That's kind of a satisfying name to say, Rebarchek, but it doesn't sound like it looks." And I said, "Yeah, that's the story of my life. My last name's a cough of consonants." Then, while I had probably only been with her for 1 minute, she told me to get in a wheelchair. I think her name was Laura. And there I am in a wheelchair, and she wheels me into an emergency room where 6 or 7 people came rushing in, led by a doctor himself in a wheelchair. His name was Stephen. And within 6 or 7 minutes, I had 2 IVs put in my arms and 7 or 8 EKG lines pasted all over my body. And I've done this many times, you guys, but me, when I'm in situations like that, especially where I'm the one being attended to, where all the focus is on me, I don't know, it could be my nervous energy, but I become the class clown. I was cracking jokes and entertaining the room, and my timing was impeccable. But around my silly self, they were all looking at my monitor. Are you all right? Do you feel nauseous? Actually, now that you point it out, yes, I can feel a tinge of nausea in my back jaw, but I'm pretty sure that's because I'm enough of a hypochondriac to feel nauseous, because you just asked me if I'm nauseated. They're asking me, "Are you lightheaded? Do you feel dizzy? Is there any tightness in your chest? Any left arm pain? Do you have any chest pain?" No. But the EKG results were immediate. I had not had a heart attack. Dr. Stephen in the wheelchair told me that, but he did say my pulse was way down. It was dropping into the 20s. It would soar clear up into the 30s. The 30s. It was way too low. He said to another medical person, probably a nurse, "It's a total block." And when he said that, I was kind of stunned. I said, "A blocked artery?" "No," he said, "your electrical system is blocked. The bottom right chamber of your heart is not firing. It's not getting the electrical impulse it needs to fire, so you need a pacemaker. We're going to have an ambulance take you downtown to Boise, and they will either give you a temporary pacemaker today or a permanent one." You guys, man, I had no idea how dire was my situation. Still there in the emergency room in Meridian, there was just me and my 30-something-year-old nurse, Caitlin. She was over there coding, and I was talking to her about what it's like to be a nurse and talking about her hobbies. She started telling me she likes going camping with her husband. In walks a guy named Andrew, and he introduced himself as the hospital chaplain. "How are you feeling?" "Not bad, actually." And then I started asking him questions about being a chaplain. I told him I actually completed chaplain training a couple years ago, but then I decided I couldn't work at a hospital because I couldn't stomach having to deal with endless meetings with administrators. Pointless meetings are a stab in my soul. But he said it wasn't like that. He loved his job. He enjoyed it. He wasn't overwhelmed with meetings, and in fact, I think he said he'd been at his job for 5 to 6 years. He told me he was regularly amazed at how the Lord showed up in times of suffering and showed up in hospitals, and it actually was telling. I mean, I could discern how personal his Christian faith was, and that made me immediately drawn to him. And he told me briefly the story of when his wife was fighting for her life down in SoCal in the UCLA Medical Center. She was fighting for her life for 2 years. For 2 years, Andrew was going in daily to be with his struggling for her life wife. And he said he saw how God works in the midst of pain and suffering. And in fact, he said that experience was significant to why he'd become a chaplain to begin with. And then get this, you guys. of all crazy things, Andrew himself has a pacemaker. He's only 51, but he's had a pacemaker for 13 years. I was laying there on my bed thinking, the Lord sent me a chaplain who himself has a pacemaker. And immediately my eyes began to water up. God was so good to bring me someone who'd gone through what I was about to endure. It's just like the Lord. And I asked him, how'd getting that pacemaker change your life? What can't you do now? And he said, well, it kept me alive, but it didn't limit any activities of mine. I'm still active. Again, it was so amazing. He was precisely the fellow with whom God wanted to bless me. And honestly, because I'm a theologian and I give suffering a good amount of thought, I was amazed at how Andrew spoke with nuance about how the Lord can show up in the middle of deep pain and suffering. He was speaking from experience. He wasn't just slinging Bible verses at me. He was vivid. You could tell he was immersed in Christ, and I could discern that just from talking with him, from his face, his body, his presence. He was just the blessing from God. It was a kind of, look, Ed, I got this from God to have that chaplain walk in. John Eldredge, in a book I'm reading, in his book, All Things New, Heaven and Earth and the Restoration of Everything You Love, Eldredge wrote, quote, Jesus will go to great lengths to assure us when most precious things need assurance. Isn't that beautiful? Jesus will go to great lengths to assure us when most precious things need assurance. And Andrew was the Lord's assurance to me there in that emergency room. Then Andrew says to me, hey, is there anything I can do for you? And I said, well, yeah, I'm always grateful for prayers. Please pray for a good procedure and no infection and the Lord's will to be done with my life. And so, yeah, he prayed for me. And then we chatted still a little more. And I said, hey, are you an Anglican? And he said, why? And I said, because normal Protestants don't talk about suffering the way you have while we're together here. He smiled, and to my tremendous surprise, he told me he was a Baptist. No way, I exclaimed. He laughed out loud, and he knew what I meant. I told him, I don't mean to be offensive, but you're way more on top of your game here as a chaplain than how I hear regular Baptists talk, especially about suffering. Usually folks are far too glib, but Andrew wasn't. And he took my surprise as a compliment. He was, again, the Lord's blessing, just what I needed. And I'll pause to say, you guys, my listeners, don't be afraid to show up. Don't be afraid to show up and bless people in the middle of their dire situations, the dire seasons of their lives. Show up and give them a hug. Show up and tell them you're praying for them. People don't like to go through hard stuff all alone. People don't like to get stuck inside of suffering by their lone selves. So show up. You have no idea how you may be a blessing or an encouragement or even to bring peace. Then, after I was in the emergency room for, an hour or an hour and 30 minutes, in comes the ambulance team. The tall and pretty woman of that 3-person team looks at me and Tanya and says, well, happy Friday the 13th. The whole room of techs and nurses went, no. She was the first one to broach the date, to broach the timing, Friday the 13th. But yeah, then I rode downtown in the ambulance. It'd take 12, 15 minutes. We went down to St. Luke's in Boise. While we were riding along, I talked with her about what it was like to be an EMT. I told her I was going to give her and her crew 5 stars on Yelp. Anyway, we got there, went out the back of the ambulance, inside the entrance, through some cold hallways, up the elevator to the 3rd floor, and they wheeled me into the ICU. And then it was kind of the same pattern repeated. Bunches of medical folks swarming around me, checking the EKG, talking together, calls for the cardiologist, lots of "do you feel okay" kinds of questions. People walking up to my monitor. Wow, that's amazing. Apparently they don't see heartbeats in the 30s and in the 20s. Well, they don't see heartbeats in the 30s and 20s with the patient alert and cracking jokes. Someone told me, well, we've called for a cardiologist to come down. He's with a patient, but he'll be here soon. Now, my good, ear-glued listener, it all happened so fast. I didn't have time to get myself freaked out. And still more, and now I can see it because I've had several days to process it, the Lord was with me. I felt a grace or a calm or a peace that made it so I didn't even think about panicking. And then, actually it wasn't much longer after that, Dr. Dacaret. Class, please say Dacaret. Dacaret, teacher. Tanya looked up his last name online. Dacaret appears to be a Palestinian name that went through Latin America, like maybe through Colombia. But Dr. Dacaret definitely had an accent. It was hard to make out. He walks in. Was he 6'1" or 6'2"? He was a good-looking dude, a real take-charge type. Very assertive, strong, commanding presence. He was dressed in green scrubs and a surgical hat. He looked at me and said, "How do you feel?" And I said, "Not really that bad." He said, "Well, we're going to put a pacemaker in you. Your heart is strong. Your valves look good, but the bottom right chamber of your heart is not getting the electrical impulse to cause it to fire. We're going to fix that. And it'll take us an hour to an hour and a half. And then if everything goes well, you can go home tomorrow. We'll get the operating room set up and then wheel you in. It's just down the hall from here, right around the corner. I'm going to see you in there in a bit." And he walks out. So we waited, I don't know, another 30 minutes. And then sure enough, two new to me guys came into the room, probably part of his surgery team. I think they were PAs. They had me move from my bed to the gurney. And immediately, if you've taken class with me, you know, immediately I said, "Hey, I'm on a gurney. Have you guys ever watched Brian Regan's emergency room bit about being on a gurney? It's hilarious." They hadn't seen it. But whoosh, out the ICU and down the hall to the operating room. While we were rolling along, I lay there, looked up at the ceiling tiles, and I prayed, "Lord, if I die today, I've had the best life of anyone who ever lived." They had told me there was a 1% chance of dying when they were giving me the pre-op instructions, and I'm rolling along there praying and my eyes teared up. I was flooded with gratitude. I've been alive 47 years since that car accident I was in as a teenager that almost killed me back then. But God's been so gracious to me a sinner, given me a beautiful wife and kids and grandkids and a vocation that I love, and I'm just so blessed, and I'm still alive. Anyway, they wheel me into the cold operating room. Why are operating rooms always so cold? 4 gents in there were prepping the room. They moved a giant, I don't know if it was 66-inch, 72-inch, 84-inch TV-like monitor over the end of my feet. And they were talking, and they were yucking it up together. The trays were being moved here and there. You could tell they loved their job. Here, move over to this surgery table, they told me. It was hard as a rock. And I actually thought to myself, I hope laying on this doesn't make my back sore. I've got a cage in my back. Cold, hard things, beds make my back sore. And I was thinking, man, this is hard and cold. And the one guy generously said, "Do you want a warming blanket?" "Yeah, please. Thank you." Rock music was playing. The 4 of them were all bebopping around the tan-walled white floored room. One guy was cracking dumb jokes and probably sounded like me. I asked, who gets to choose the music? One of them said, oh, this is just Sirius XM pop music. Sometimes we do surgeries to country, sometimes to rock. In fact, we've done many surgeries to Metallica. And I cracked, yeah, can you imagine doing a heart surgery to Master of Puppets? And they were laughing. They said, yeah, we've done it. You guys, I do love that slow section of Master of Puppets where they slow it way down and play that guitar duet. It's sweet. It's powerful. It's poignant. It's almost a sound of lament inside of a horrible song about being addicted to drugs. Anyway, the guy says to me, do you like Metallica? And I said, well, honestly, not that much. But I have been to one of their concerts here in Boise years ago. It was way overproduced. It wasn't raw like a good hard rock concert should be. Yeah, he responded, I've been to 2 Metallica concerts back in the day. It was so fun. Then the young guy who was moving me around told me, I'm going to get this camera right here over your heart. And then he says, okay, now I'm going to put 25 milligrams of propofol in your IV. I said, all right. He says, Dr. Daccaret will be in shortly. And the next thing I know, while I'm pretty much pleasantly asleep, the doctor says over my right ear, Ed, there's going to be a poke in your chest. It's going to hurt. We're putting in the first line. And, yep, I feel a poke in my chest, a kind of a weird intrusion, some pain. Then what? I don't know. A few minutes later, he says, okay, we're going to put the second line in. You're going to feel a poke again and some pain. Yep, poke. Yep, a weird kind of pain, followed by restful silence. And then, in what only seemed like 5 minutes later, someone said to me, all right, we're done. We're going to move you back to your room. Please slide yourself over to the gurney. And almost immediately I was awake and moved myself to the gurney. And if you can believe it, my listener, I could feel a difference in my body immediately. There was no more lag. There was no more weirdness, which is how I was describing it to people. Yeah, there was still some tinnitus. In fact, maybe the tinnitus was a bit louder, but there was no more lag. There was no more feeling drained. And immediately after what only took them 45 minutes, 45 minutes is how long it took them to change, to restore a lifetime, I felt much better. I felt clearer and I felt stronger. I don't know exactly how to describe it. Clearer, stronger. Well, obviously, the whole of my heart was finally working now. And it was so great because I didn't have to be intubated. I didn't have to go clear under some deep anesthesia. I didn't have to lay on a recovery room bed and come out of a deep surgical anesthesia grogginess like I've done before in my life. It was just a nap, a restful nap, and suddenly I was awake again. It was amazing. And almost immediately on top of that, I was aware that I'm alive. I'm alive and I feel good, and I'm alive. It was really quite euphoric, and I knew the Lord was with me. And I was flooded with gratitude during that short ride back to my ICU room. And once I was in that room, I learned that they had placed steroids on the end of each pacemaker wire to help the heart to help the heart receive the new adaptation so that it doesn't just reject the new attachments. I started thinking of it as kind of like an arterial WD-40. They sprayed WD-40 on the end of those wires so my heart would take it in. And Tanya was there. I was obviously super glad to see her. And I told her, I already feel different. Then they had me order lunch. And amazingly, and again, it's amazing because I've been through something like 15 surgeries in the past, I didn't have hardly any incision pain. I took 2 Tylenol that afternoon, 2 the next morning, 2 the morning after that, 1 again after that, but I haven't had any for the last several days. The incision doesn't look bad at all. It's about 1.5 inches long. There's some bruising all around the incision, bruising where presumably, because I was pleasantly asleep, I didn't know it, but presumably the doctor was putting pressure on my chest to do different things during the procedure. My incision was closed with skin glue. There's no sutures. There's no having to return later to get stitches pulled out. And if you've been through that, you know how that's kind of unnerving. Anyway, next they were trying to get me up to a room on the 7th floor, telemetry. But there wasn't any room. It was too busy. And they said, Ed, you're going to have to spend the night. Sorry, you're going to have to spend the night here in the ICU. And I said, you know what? I don't care. That's fine. What I wanted to say was, I don't care. I'm alive. It's not that big a deal. I didn't say that. I ate my lunch. That evening I watched a chunk of the Winter Olympics. I watched the American women beat Canada for the first time ever in curling in the Olympics. I kept laying there over and over and over, thanking the Lord for his astounding goodness and mercy to me. I was alive. I was alive, and the procedure was behind me, and I felt good. But still, that night was no picnic. I really was tired, and I don't think I was tired so much because of the pain, but tired from the whole ordeal, the trauma. I think just the trauma of the ordeal. So, and you know this, my listener, you know this, you don't get any sleep in a hospital. Every time I moved my arms, the IV alarms would go off. And those alarms would go off and no one would come in to stop the alarm. So I learned to unkink my IVs and my arms, and eventually the annoying alarm would stop. But those goofy alarms, they kept me alive. They kept me awake. And they kept me awake more than the noise in the hallway or the 2 bright lights that were around me or the rooms on either side of me. It was those boogers, those alarms. And then, of course, I had to pee. It's the middle of the night. I feel good. I could, actually, I could get up. Physically, I was more than strong enough to get up and pee. But if I did, the nurse, a good, young, attentive dude named Joseph would come in and interrupt my pee. He'd walk in right when I was standing up to pee without permission, and undoubtedly then he'd tell me that I shouldn't have got out of bed without his help or his observance. So I peed repeatedly in a urinal. And the whole time I'm thinking, man, am I peeing on myself? It's warm down there. Yuck. Am I peeing on the bed sheet? Ugh. I hate using a handheld urinal. My listener, today when you go pee, thank the Lord you're peeing upright, that you're not on a bedpan. You're not in an ICU bed in critical condition. Oh, the little things we take for granted. That night I slept from 11 to midnight, woke up for a couple hours, then I slept from 2 to 4:30. And when Joseph had come in just before 2, he said, I can help you. Do you want some melatonin? I said, nah, I'll be all right, thanks. So I spent the night dozing, watching TV, sort of, staring at the clock with gratitude, listening to my IV alarms going off. But every time, and I mean this, my listener, every time an alarm went off, instead of my typical Rebarchekian response of irritation, I thanked the Lord. I thanked him that I was alive to hear the alarm, because not hearing the alarm would have meant that I died, or that I had died out on the golf course, or that I had passed out on the golf course. And I wonder, what would my golf buddies have done? Would Would I have made it? I guess hopefully I would have collapsed near the end of the round with them, that way they wouldn't have to drag me around the course while they finished their round. And if I had passed out or died over there on that side of the valley, would I have been taken to the other, less up-to-date hospital on the other side of the valley? Yuck. Again, I counted my blessings. I was so fortunate to be in a stellar hospital. Oh, thank you, Lord. And I couldn't tell, and I didn't immediately ask, but many of the folks throughout the event used the word blessed or blessings when they were talking toward me. And I sensed, maybe I'm wrong, but I sensed that many of my nurses and attendant techs and so forth were believers. A lot of them talked like believers. Oh, but then back to Joseph. At around 2 a.m., he came in to give me a slow infused dose of antibiotics. He said, we got to put these in while you're here. And he said, you know what, Ed? You made a good decision to go to the ER yesterday. And I said, why? He said, well, first, we're much busier on Saturdays. It wouldn't have happened so fast for you. But second, there wouldn't have been a cardiologist on duty. Not until Tuesday. So you would have had a box on your chest that shocks your heart through your skin to keep you alive for 4 days. And it's no picnic. Patients don't appreciate it at all. And I said, oh, wow, thank you, Joseph. He said, yeah, you did well to follow your gut and go to the ER. And again, that night I laid there and repeatedly prayed, oh, thank you, Abba. Oh, thank you, Lord Jesus. I just dodged 4 days of just having to lay in the hospital and get shocked through my chest. And I know I would have gone from the funny and affable patient that I had been through the process to a Polish, Rybarczyk, pain in the butt, ornery, insufferable patient. Oh, thank you, Holy Spirit, for pressing me yesterday in the car. Thank you, Holy Spirit, for pressing me when I asked my phone what was going on. Thank you for pressing me to take action, to drive myself to the ER. And then, also, I'd prepared myself emotionally that I was not going to get out of the hospital Saturday until 4 o'clock. I've been in the hospital so many times to know that getting discharged can be like watching paint dry or like pulling a wisdom tooth. So I prepared myself, and even though they said Dr. Dacaret makes his rounds early in the morning, I prepared myself not to get out of there till 4 o'clock. I had a crummy breakfast, even though the lunch before and the dinner before were good. That morning breakfast was pretty bad. And at about 8:40 Saturday morning, in strides Dr. Dacaret. And he looks at me and says, how are you feeling? Really well. Good, because you're going to go home ASAP. I got to finish my rounds, then I'll submit an order to have you discharged, but you're going to be out of here. I said, oh, great. Thank you so much. I so appreciate your professionalism and your help. After that, I don't know, maybe 20 minutes, the tech rep from Boston Scientific came in. He had a cart about 4 feet tall with a machine on it. And he came in, he said both to slow down my pacemaker and to speed it up. He wanted to see what my heart would do in both situations, to see whether that pacemaker was implanted properly or not. So I laid there for a few minutes. And he said, Ed, you got the best doctor on the West Coast for putting in a pacemaker. There were no complications. You don't have any problems. And you guys, 2 Tylenol, again, just for the first few days was all I needed for that 1.5-inch long incision. Oh, here's another hospital tip for you, a hospital hack. I learned many years ago it's good to get up and go for a walk. If you walk, you show the doctors you're more ready to go. So Friday night, I asked Joseph, hey, can I walk? And he helped me as my usher, pulling my IV. We walked around the ICU floor 4 to 5 times. We did that again in the morning with my nurse named Ray. I did that before Dr. Dacarette came in. I walked around the ICU floor 5, 6, 7 times. Oh my goodness. Looking around, seeing the peeps in the other rooms, I ain't got no problems. From what I could tell, they were all in bad shape, nearly comatose or nearly totes unconscious. And again it hit me. Thank you, gracious God, for health. Thank you for your mercy. Thank you for doctors and nurses and techs and company technicians and PAs. Still, for all that, I threw those socks out when I left because I thought, Lord knows what's on the floor of an ICU unit, right? Oh my goodness. Then, sweet relief, at 10 a.m. Saturday, I was walking out the door. I initially entered the emergency room 24 hours earlier. And I didn't know it then, but I was dangerously close to collapse. Was I dangerously close to death? I don't know. No one said it, but they kind of implied it. But now, here 10 a.m. Saturday morning, here I was, walking out the door, getting in my son-in-law, DJ's truck, just like I was a new man. Thanks again, DJ, for the ride. Over the next several days, I kept pausing and tearing up and crying. Thank you. Thank you just washes through me and over me. God is so good. And if you can believe it, you guys, I won't have to adjust my lifestyle. I can stay active. I've been doing daily stationary bike rides just like before. The pacemaker will adjust as needed to my level of physical activity. I'm wearing a sling around the house for the first week and then for 3 more weeks in bed. Apparently most people who hurt themselves do so while sleeping. Now the doctor told me, wait a month before you play golf. But the Boston Scientific rep told me, you know what? You'd be wiser to extend that a few weeks, even go out to 2 months. Be safe. Be smart. That Boston Scientific rep said that they had a patient who, after 1 week, not long ago, after 1 week of getting a pacemaker, he was real aggressive fellow, strong, active. 1 week after getting his pacemaker installed, he was doing pull-ups. And the pull-ups jerked one of the wires off his heart. And he had to go back into the ER and have the pacemaker removed and reinstalled. A real fiasco. So the rep said, be sure to take it easy. Follow the post-surgery instructions. No heavy lifting. No sudden movements. Look at Ed, he says, that pacemaker's not going to come out of your chest, but take it easy. Give it enough time to heal. You'll never regret that you followed the instructions and gave it time to heal. 4 days after the pacemaker was installed, my incision was itchy. I wish I could have just scratched away at it, but that was a sign that it was getting better. All the dark purple bruising around that incision, or mostly to the right of that incision, it's apparent, but it's fading. And my family has a history of heart issues. My grandpa, my mom's dad, died in his late 50s from either a stroke or a heart attack or both. My uncle, my mom's brother, had a heart attack with 5 stents put in when he was 58. My mom, she had open heart surgery about 5.5 years ago to repair, or man, she's had such a hard time to try to repair a valve situation. So heart issues run on my maternal side of the family. And again, especially over the first week or so, after surgery, I was just getting washed over in tears of joy. I'm not dead. I feel so much better. I'm grateful that I'm living in a time with technology and medicine and I'm not dead. And the truth is, you guys, gratitude, she can change your life. She can change your entire outlook on life. So, I'm alive and blessed and well, and it's weird, but I got a pacemaker and I wanted I wanted to let you know. What are my takeaways for you, my listener? Well, I've said it several times. Live with gratitude. My takeaway for you first, live with gratitude. Be grateful for even little things. Running water, a good meal, family who love you, being able to walk and work and produce. God designed us to work and produce, so enjoy the doing. And take time in your thoughts and your quiet prayers to thank Him while you're enjoying the doing. Gratitude. Here's another takeaway. Be present for people. I truly believe I had a better experience because I was asking folks what they like about their jobs there in the hospital. What's it like to do what you do? What's it like to be around constant suffering? Be present for them. And you don't have to be fake about it. Just show a little interest. Because most people will appreciate your there-ness, your Dasein in German. Class, please say Dasein. Dasein, teacher. Your there-ness. And finally, and I don't mean to be macabre or glib, you know I'm not wired that way, but finally, realize that you could be gone in a heartbeat. 8 everyday folks went skiing in NoCal last week, and an avalanche hit them, and their lives are over. And some of them were in their 30s. Some of them were moms of kids on ski team. Lord, have mercy on those families and those kids and those folks. But I'm not saying realize you could be gone in a heartbeat to tell you to live in fear. Because no, like I've said on a show a couple years ago, we're all going to go someday. Realize you could be gone in a heartbeat and soak in each day. Realize that each day is a eternally unique day. You were created for this day, to live this day, to work this day, to be attentive this day. So see this day as a gift. Do something that honors the Lord in this day. And in the meantime, thanks everyone for your prayers. Thank you sincerely for your support of my show, all of you blessed Patreon supporters. Thank you, Gallerini Roofing Construction, for your support of my show. I am truly grateful. Please, you guys, know this. Until next week, I love you.